Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. My name is Artem, and here is the news. 832 days less the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Bloomberg informed that the draft of the decision of the Global Peace Summit, which will be held on 15-16 June in Switzerland, mentions further involvement of Russian representatives for the negotiations concerning the Ukrainian peace formula, reports European Pravda. The document says that the peace conference in Switzerland will focus on 3 points of the peace formula: nuclear security, trade security, and bringing the kidnapped children back to Ukraine. Among other things, the document will stress the necessity to make nuclear facilities safe and announce any threat of the use of nuclear weapons as inadmissible. The conference will call for free shipping in Black and Azov seas, for export of Ukrainian food products, as well as for liberation of all prisoners of war, including deported and illegally displaced children. In order to achieve these goals, the document envisages further engagement of the representatives of Russia. Bloomberg notes that the draft of the summit's communiqué may change. Russia will not participate in the conference in Switzerland, calling the event "blazed" and the country holding it openly hostile. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky did not rule out that the summit in June would lay the groundwork for further involvement of representatives of Russia in the negotiations. But it could only be done on the basis of the Ukrainian peace formula, which Moscow does not recognize. US President Joe Biden gave an interview to Time, in which he described how he sees possible peace in Ukraine, reports BBC News Ukraine. The US leader said that peace in Ukraine means a guarantee that Russia will never be able to occupy the country. He emphasized the word "never" several times. At the same time, Biden does not think that Ukraine has to become a NATO member for this to be the case. Quote, "It means we have a relationship with them like we do with other countries where we supply weapons so they can defend themselves in the future. But I am not prepared to support the NATOization of Ukraine," unquote, he added. Still, Biden stressed that the West cannot allow Ukraine to fall because it would destabilize every country that borders Russia, from the Balkans to Belarus. Biden also denied that helping Ukraine puts NATO on a slippery slope to war with Russia. Quote, "No, we are on a slippery slope for war if we don't do something about Ukraine," unquote. We would really appreciate if you could rate us, ideally with 5 stars, and leave a glowing review in the app where you are listening to this podcast: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and others. This really helps more people to find out about the highlights from Ukraine and truth about Russia's invasion. The Ukrainian Parliament Verkhovna Rada supported a draft law which defines English as the language of international communication in Ukraine, reports Ukrinform. The document officially establishes the status of English and also defines the categories of positions for which candidates are required to speak English. The law also regulates the peculiarities of the use of English in the national and local governments, state services, education, culture, transport, healthcare, etc. It provides for learning English in kindergartens, a bonus for civil servants who speak English in the amount of 10% of salary, need to have English versions of government websites, allows screening of English language films in cinemas with Ukrainian subtitles. At the same time, according to the language law, the number of movie screenings in the original language, in this case English, cannot exceed 10%. A Ukrainian company bought a new house for 98-year-old resident of the Donetsk region Lydia Stepanivna, whose previous home was destroyed by the Russians, reports Ukrainska Pravda. In April, she left the occupied Ocheretina area in the Donetsk region and reached the territory controlled by Ukraine. The woman had to cover 10 kilometers under fire. The road was difficult, she fell several times, lost her breath, but continued to go. In the evening, the old woman was spotted by the military and handed over to the White Angel evacuation group. She was placed in a temporary shelter for evacuees. And now she has already moved to a new home of her own. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We're a commercial initiative of just 2 people and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.